Yeah. Yeah. Something to tell your grandkids about. Yeah, you were in the earthquake on walking. So having something for your team to come together on those things that cost the earth. Systems that we yeah. That's all. Yes. So we did. And they were just like, no, we got it. Like, no, you don't have it. He's like, you're gonna
Nope, it's just one to make sure I pick up when my wife starts. Yeah, yeah. The hardest part is making sure the sound is good, so I know which of it. And I think they've sort of admitted that. So. Yeah. Good evening and welcome to the special city council meeting for the city of Ellensburg. It is February 12th and we will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance led by Councilmember Goodlow. United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, call the roll.
Beauchamp.
Here.
Goodlow.
Here.
Lilquist.
Here.
Miller.
Here.
Thompson. Here. And Elliott.
Here. We'll start off. Do you have something you want me to say or do you want me to dive into this process?
You can dive right into this. If you wanted me to do a quick intro, we can do that. Okay, wonderful. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council members. Heidi Barron-Sternaway, your city manager. We have an open position, Council number 3. It was vacated at the end of December by former Council member Adam Wynn. The state law provides 90 days for you to fill the seat. Otherwise, the responsibility goes to the county commissioners. So at the end or at the beginning of January, you came up with a process for which to provide an opportunity for folks to submit applications. Through February 5th, we received 6 applications for the position. It was advertised at least 3 times in the Daily Record and in addition to some other publications. And all of the applicants here are ready to answer some questions. Those questions have been provided to them in advance. There was one additional question that was added, and that is on the bottom of your list. And again, they have the same questions at their table. The process is entirely up to you, and we have staff standing by to help support you with your interviews today.
Okay, thank you. And welcome. Been in your seat. So if you're nervous, you know the answers to these questions already. So our job is to just try and make a selection that's serves the community of Ellensburg, and it'll be difficult. As we go through the process, if you feel like you need to repeat the question or you need to take a second to collect your thoughts, this is not intended to be, polished JFK speech writing. So we're going to start through the process, and just for the audience, in addition to the 8 questions that have been provided to the candidates and to the council members, there was one written submission, so we have that available for us to review as well. And we're going to go through the questions sort of council member by council member. So Councilmember Thompson will start off with question 1 and we'll just run down the line and back, and we'll start with a different candidate each time on each question. Just in case, we are all have a lot to say about each question. I've set some time limits for the questions, and as we introduce the question, I'll tell you what the time limit is, and there'll be a timer on the screen that'll count down. Some of them are 3-minute questions, some of them are 2. It's not going to be a hard, I'm going to cut you off. But as you approach your time limit, we want you to wrap it up so that we can make time for the rest of the questions. So again, to the extent that you can, please relax and just talk to us. Okay. So council, do you have any questions? Okay. So as I said, Councilmember Thompson's going to start off with question number 1, which is a 3-minute question.
Thank you. Please tell us about yourself and why you feel you are qualified to represent the Ellensburg community on city council, highlighting any experience or skills that you may have, that may apply, excuse me.
Begin with.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, Brian, you're first.
I get a start?
Yeah.
Wow. Lucky me.
All right. Can I be heard okay? Just want to.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys are also, you're welcome to sit at the table, but you can also step up if that makes you feel more comfortable.
Again, my name is Brian Cullinane. My background and experience, I believe, makes me uniquely qualified to fill the Ellensburg City Council seat created by the resignation of Adam Wynn. My record of public service and it shows that I would bring to the council a moderate consensus building voice among being able to find common ground among differing viewpoints and find common sense solutions that work for those I've been appointed or hopefully in the future elected to serve. I have served our community in a number of different roles. I served on the Ellensburg City Board of Adjustment, quasi-judicial board, until it was replaced by a hearings examiner. I have supported public safety in a number of different ways over the years within the community. I served on the Kittitas County Planning Commission for several years. I served a term on the Committee for Salaries for Elected Officials at the county level. For many years, I was active in the Ellensburg Chamber and co-moderated and kept time for candidate forums in room. In fact, some of you were involved in that over the years. I also moderated the legislative day, post-legislative session for our 2 representatives and our state senator, bringing together the many differing groups within our community, the fabric that makes Ellensburg so unique, which included local and city government, healthcare, mental health, private groups like HomeView and Hope Source. I have extensive experience working with legislators, local elected officials, and state government agencies. Part of my daily job is providing government services to citizens. In the past, my past has demonstrated leadership and shown that I can work with those who have differing viewpoints and philosophies around an issue to find constructive common ground and common sense solutions. I believe it's important to keep an open mind on issues and spend more time listening to the stakeholders on any issue and less time talking. I have a unique experience, again, of interacting with citizens of our community on a daily basis, providing government services through Ellensburg licensing. Daily, I hear the concerns of our community, their struggles, their concerns for themselves and their families. If selected to the open council seat, it is my intention to listen to the citizens of our community and find thoughtful solutions to the issues that they face in this wonderful community.
Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and audience members. You get the back of my head. Sorry about that. My name's David Douglas, and I'm a citizen of our city, and I've lived within the city limits for more than 20 years. I likely would have the shortest commute to City Hall if selected, if that matters, because we literally live about a block from here. So I would have to always be here on time. I wouldn't have any excuse otherwise. I do have experience serving on boards and committees, having previously served on the Kittitas County Mental Health and Recovery Board, having served on Central Washington University's Faculty Senate and the Executive Committee on that Faculty Senate, and having served as the president and founder of the Kittitas County Recovery Community Organization. I founded that entity. I was the president of the board, and then I was the executive director until I stepped down at the first of this year. I'm a faculty member at CW and have taught and advised students in our community for over 12 years. Additionally, my wife and I own and operate a preschool. She mostly runs it. I just help her a little bit and stay out of her way. And we have an event planning business that we get to have some fun with in the summer months in the county. All of these activities allow us to be invested in the community in this and other ways in my individual and our collective works, being a part of this community, both of us for over 20 years. I'm also passionate, highly passionate about the work I do in the community to serve our community members in recovery from substance use disorders. I would very much like to serve on council to be an overall voice for all of our citizens in all of these areas. I'm engaged with what is happening in our city through both my professional and personal life, and I have a vested interest in our city's future. We have roots here. I remember moving here and someone who's a local said, you can't say you're a local until you've been here 30 years. So I've got 7 years left. We're not going anywhere because I want to hit that mark. I'm a parent and a grandparent. I have an adult son who works in our city. And one of my grandsons currently attends school at Morgan Middle School. And we have many friends who have kids and we attend all of their sporting events and functions. And we love doing a lot of the activities that we have in our city. I do always like to note that I'm the full package. And what do I mean by that? At 29 years old, I was on the streets. I lived a completely different life many years ago now. And so I've been in the system and in systems in different ways. And now I live an amazing life and I get to do good work to help people that are in that same situation and get out of that system. And I know our community, like many others, has issues in the area of drugs and crime and things that go along with that and homelessness. And I want to help work to change those things. And I think this role for me on city council would help me to achieve those goals. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Hello, I'm Jennifer Lubanski. I think my resume reflects my leadership and project management skills that would serve well for council. But also, I started this process a couple years ago when I applied, when Monica took the seat, and I was challenged to join some boards at that time, and I did that. I joined the Centrifuge Board, and I've been serving there for 2 years. And as part of that work, I ended up becoming involved with the arts community as they were beginning the process of meeting with the community and finding out how the community wanted to dream about making Ellensburg a creative district and moving the arts forward in our community. I was really honored when they elected me to be president of the Arts and Cultural Alliance, just as we were forming, and have been doing a lot of work with that group. And we've become a 501c3, just laying a lot of groundwork for the things that have been going on in that area in our city. I'm committed to collaboration and believe that differences of opinion should never endanger relationships. And I endeavor to create spaces that encourage bold discussion for the sake of better solutions and in ways that uphold the importance of continued respect. I'm not able to be an expert on everything that this is needed in this job. And all I can do is say that I will assist in making space for us to be thoughtful and to consider information and to seek the wisdom of the people that we should to make decisions. And in line with these beliefs, as the Alliance was forming, they gave me the honor of opening up a retreat that we had one day. And I had 10 minutes to lay a foundation of 5 core skills that I think we need to be in community. And I believe that that foundation has really moved our work forward in a way that helped us to continue to collaborate and honor each other and really helped us accomplish some amazing things as a group. So I'm really proud of being able to do that, and just thank you for your time. And I hope I have the opportunity to serve.
Thank you.
Hello, Councilman, Mayor, audience. I'm Katie Nolan. I'm a Washington State native, currently working at the ground level with low-income residents, seeing the top-down results of grants, legislation, and outreach. I'm a grateful member of the recovery community here, a patron of the arts, and a believer in climate change and preparing for that future. I am young and passionate with a diverse range of experiences that I am honored to apply to work every day. The bulk of my career has been spent behind the scenes, working first for the largest nonprofit theater in Portland, and then for the city of Portland itself. In both venues, I was responsible for advanced planning, rigging, safety, and production needs, as well as large-scale infrastructure purchases. I was the youngest person and the first female to be hired for that role. I became the Young Workers Committee Chair for the Stagehand Union and established monthly Portland-wide union meetings where longshoremen, electricians, nurses, teachers, you name it, met monthly to share goals and build relationships. And I was simultaneously the production manager for Pickathon, an annual music festival hosting 65 bands and 15,000 weekend patrons. After over a decade of notoriously demanding entertainment schedules, I left the city and the industry to apprentice as a farmer and butcher. Not long after, COVID arrived, and I relocated to Ellensburg to be closer to my family. While finding my feet, I've worked for Sayla's Drain and Sewer, two very different local butchers, and the infamous Gerald's. In my current role at Hope Source, I've worked in conservation, education, rental, mortgage, and energy assistance and weatherization. Each opportunity has provided valuable insight into Ellensburg labor, politics, and business operations. Since moving here, I've also found a phenomenal arts community, social communities, and recovery communities. I've served on the board of Blue Bear Puppet Lab, helping them to relocate to their new Main Street address, organize their 501c3, apply for grants, and partner with Gallery One to create a new collaborative arts space. I volunteer weekly as a partner family to one of my coworkers, a kick-butt single mom building her first home with Habitat for Humanity. I regularly attend local AA meetings and work with others in recovery, and I'm currently participating in Leadership Kittitas County. I've restarted my life and career in Ellensburg and have grown to love the people and resources here, so much so that I purchased my home last year. At times, it's felt humbling to start over, but it's precisely because I'm in touch on the ground level and because I'm approaching this role with fresh eyes and enthusiasm that I feel I'm qualified to represent the community here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. Excuse me. Good evening, everyone. My name is Delano Palmer. How's everyone doing back there? I am from Houston, Texas, and admittedly, I probably have the shortest amount of time here in Ellensburg, being a Texas native. If you've seen my resume, I spent a lot of time traveling the country as a project manager in construction. And it's precisely that background that I think brings the benefit of me to the council. I focus a lot on collaboration, a lot on communication. I think that anyone in this role, those are the two most important factors as far as serving the city. You have to take in the perspective of every citizen, every perspective, before being able to come up with the decisions that mutually benefit the most amount of people as possible. In my role, I'm also the director of capital planning and projects for the university. I've been able to manage small projects, large projects, small teams, large teams, budgets of 5,000, budgets of 100 million. No matter the project, no matter the size, it all comes down to communication and collaboration. And that's what I think I bring to the city council. In my previous life, I didn't really get a chance to get involved with my community that much, quite honestly. I spent 60 hours a week working, a lot of travel, 3 weeks every month away from my family, and decided to move to the Pacific Northwest. We had some friends up here, and we found our way to Ellensburg. And admittedly, I thought I was going to be teaching at Central, but I found my way back into construction management because I enjoyed it so much. And in the short time that I've been here, I've seen something I haven't seen before. Now, I'm a big city guy, born and raised in Houston, lived in Dallas, Jacksonville, other large cities, and I have never been around small, just tight-knit community like this. And it inspires you. I always wonder why so many folks that have gone to big cities come here and then they just stay here. Every time I talk to someone that is not from here, they said there's something about Ellensburg that draws you in. And that's why I'm kind of interested in this position. It's something that is a civic duty for anybody that cares about your community. Right now, I serve on a planning commission. I also serve in Habitat for Humanity volunteering. And these are ways that I like to give back of my time, of my effort. And that's what I want to bring to the council, is just my time and my effort and collaboration and communication. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. In my pre-Ellensburg life, I was in the corporate hotel business, managing hotels and resorts, both on the resort level and at the corporate level for about 40 years. During that time, especially in the last half of that time, I spent a lot of time developing and opening resorts and a lot of times sitting on boards. In my last position in the corporate hotel world, I was on 22 boards at one time, some of which I chaired and some of which I sat on. So the point of all that, besides being kind of crazy, was that I was heavily involved in problem solving and consensus building, because you can't do otherwise if on boards, or you'll never get anything accomplished. So that's one of the qualities that I think I bring to this situation here. When I first started coming to Ellensburg in 2006, I just immediately just fell in love with the town. And bought a house here in 2007. But I was still working in the corporate world and living in Redmond at the time. So I spent the next 7 years figuring out how to get here full time. Finally doing so in 2014. From the time we moved over here full time, I felt like I identified the need for a hotel in downtown, and that's something that this town really needed. And I was fascinated to learn the history of, I did a little due diligence and learned the history of Ellensburg, not just of the hotel business in Ellensburg, but of Ellensburg in general, and was fascinated by it. So when I moved here full time, I set about learning about the people in Ellensburg. So I started networking. And in Ellensburg, like a lot of towns, if you start raising your hand to volunteer, people will call on you. And so before I knew it, I was on the EBDA board, which is now Centrifuge. I was on the Landmarks Commission, which I eventually became vice chair of. But I spent 6 years on the chamber board, including president in 2022. And I'm currently on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee for Ellensburg. I was also named the Volunteer of the Year in 2016 by the EDA and Downtown Visionary of all things in 2019. And along with my wife, Ruth, we were really proud to be awarded the Theo Van Gogh Award by Gallery One in 2021. We eventually put a partnership together and built Hotel Windrow, which was the largest investment in downtown Ellensburg since I'm almost finished. Since Fred Meyer. We are looking forward to staying here the rest of our lives, and this is home. And I look forward to joining the council if I'm chosen.
Thank you. And just for the audience sake, we're not doing hard stops on these. We'll just remind people to wrap it up. So if you're used to our normal where we cut people off, we're not going to do that tonight. Also, and I probably should have started off with this. On our agenda, there is public comment after we get through the questions. So we've just started. Public comment is a special meeting and is going to be focused on just the selection process. So I don't know if that changes anything for anybody in the audience. You're certainly welcome to stay and have comment on that. So Councilmember Miller, you have question number 2, and we're going to start with candidate David Douglas. This is a 2-minute question, by the way.
2 minutes. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Let's see. So the question is, if there was one project or area of emphasis you would like to see the city focus on over the next 4 years, what would it be and why?
So I actually wrote 2 down. I asked my wife which one I should talk about. So here's what we get. And I think it's the right one, but I'll keep it short. So looking at ways to provide a multitude of activities for all citizens, individuals and families alike. We should work to create a community that not only provides housing and jobs, which are critical things that we need to provide, I believe, as a community, but also great opportunities to connect community members through other activities. We should be a guide for that. Thank you.
So we just continue down that. Just what?
So I would really like to see the city create a tiered approach to housing. So I know that there are some rulings that are making it that the city needs to do permanent sheltering. And I know that work is moving forward. We have some significant players when it comes to Habitat and Hope Source and the Housing Authority in subsidized housing. But we kind of have a gap of entry level for for people to get into the market in housing. And with the changes that have happened in our society, we have a lot more single people. And that means we just don't have a lot of housing that meets that need, right? Just for single people to live on their own. And so it is an area where we need to develop housing. It's also a way that people can get into the market and then leverage creating wealth that then moves them up when they're ready to do a family, to have a family or some other things like that. The other thing that that does, if we focus on creating housing at that level, entry level market for single people, is it frees up family housing, because a lot of times what singles are doing is they're buying more house than they need. And so then that puts a strain on the other products, so there are less houses available for people to buy. And the other thing that I would really like to have us consider is to think specifically about the people that we need to have in our community, whether it's tradespeople, highly educated doctors, and think about whether or not we could create subsidized low interest home loan programs for people who can fill those needs that we specifically need in our community and get them into homes so that they would stay here. So, thanks.
No.
Do
If you need me to repeat the question, I'd be happy to. For any of you.
you want me to read it?
At your pleasure.
If there was one project or area of emphasis you would like to see the city focus on over the next 4 years, what would it be and why? I think it's important to note here that whoever's appointed will probably be spending a significant amount of time just learning, listening, playing catch up, doing a lot of reading. As far as I'm concerned, it's never going to be about what I envision. But I do think that this is a unique opportunity because council elections are usually thought of in 4-year terms or more. Because comprehensive plans look significantly into the future, and commissions have never-ending agendas like affordable housing, city planning, diversity and inclusion, all really important things, but they're never-ending issues. I think this is a unique opportunity to take advantage of the timeframe that we do have and ask city constituents to weigh in on something that would be a 1-year goal, a SMART goal, specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, and time-bound. Petition the public for any and all ideas. Last council meeting, there was the idea of naming the alleys. I mean, let's put everything on the table. And then ask the city to vote on them in ranked order and see what happens. I did talk to some other people in town, at the dog park, at work, out in the community. More than once I heard a splash pad at Rotary Park. I didn't expect it, but great. Some people would like to create a backyard food initiative with water conscious or edible garden tax breaks. Someone talked about a tax credit for chickens. Establish an apprentice program for Ellensburg High School students akin to Running Start. But for skilled workers, which we desperately need. Investigate more dramatic alternatives that are housing construction models. Install solar panels on a city-owned building and see how they like it. It's just a quote. But I'm already negative, but I think it's a unique opportunity to ask the city what it would like to see and do something in a determined amount of time. Thank you.
Well, as a construction guy, I'm always thinking about the things that people don't see. So mine is not going to be the most attractive idea. It's always thinking about what's happening with our infrastructure. We're a town that is in an interesting place in time where we're seeing steady growth to the city. My concern is on the byways, the highways, the roads that get here, the electrical infrastructure, the other utilities that citizens are paying. How does that impact those that are below the poverty line, above the poverty line? How does that impact our economic growth and development? Infrastructure plays such a pivotal role in the community. And so my focus would be, what are we doing to ensure our resiliency as a city? That's ensuring that from a backup utility standpoint, that we're serving our citizens. I think that's the stewardships that at a bare minimum is expected from all the citizens of Ellensburg. So that's where I put my focus. Again, it's not the most attractive, but just thinking about the thing that has the most impact, especially if it fails, it's infrastructure.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna hit the same thing because it's the infrastructure is what I wrote down here as number one. When we were building the hotel, I learned a lot about the infrastructure downtown. I remember one particular situation where we needed to bring a big crane in to move a tank and to put it in a spot behind the hotel. And we had to bring the crane in from Sixth Avenue down the alley because there were some concerns about taking that big of a crane down Fifth Avenue over the top of Wilson Creek. And while I knew Wilson Creek was under Fifth Avenue, I didn't know that there was a concern about it caving in. But our infrastructure is old and it needs to be attended to, and it's not popular and it's expensive and all those kind of things, but those are things that need to be attended to. On the other side of things, I think quality of life issues, which certainly infrastructure is a quality of life issue, but I think we also at the same time need to focus on more quality of life projects like Unity Park, which I think is a wonderful project and will be a wonderful asset for the city going into the future. So those are the two things that I would look at is infrastructure and quality of life projects.
Thank you. Full name?
I think one of my biggest concerns, especially over the last couple of years, has been public safety and letting our quality of life that we enjoy in our community slip away. Very closely to that is affordable housing, but the thing I'm most concerned about is a significant uptick in property crime, crime that I have experienced firsthand and that I'm seeing in our community. In the last 2 years, my homeowner or my housing association, we've had our fences tagged multiple times. We've had prowls, vehicle prowls, break-ins. And even though we have street lights through our community, our homeowners community has advised us to keep our porch and garage lights on to dissuade criminal activity. My office building, which is at the Meridian Theater, has had an attempted armed robbery. The theater part of the building was broken into in the middle of the night. They broke down a bunch of doors, finally got into the safe room. Somehow they got a jaws of life and almost got into the safe. We've had our dump trailer behind our building stolen in broad daylight. We have video of it. It's never been recovered. My dump trailer, my own personal dump trailer in buildings and jet ski outside my office, the locks have been broken off them. The batteries have been stolen. We've had to add surveillance cameras, panic alarms to my office. I'm concerned about the quality of life that we've enjoyed this community. When I was a student at University of Washington in the early 90s, it was one of the best places to live year after year. And we've seen a decay, a breakdown in society. I don't want to see that here in Ellensburg. And so if I'm appointed to the council, I want to see an emphasis on core public safety issues. I want to make sure that the community that I enjoyed, that I've been so blessed with, is there for my friends and family in the future.
Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move to question 3. This is a 2-minute question, and Nancy, you'll ask.
You're going to ask question number 3. Okay. Question. Jennifer, you first.
Okay.
What would you propose the city do to increase public engagement in decision-making, such as commenting on plans, projects, priorities, and policy changes?
So I am a believer in sometimes you just have to capitalize on momentum, and that when people show up, the best thing we can do is equip them in how to be effective voices in the community. And so sometimes that may mean taking time to explain to people how to be involved appropriately and to have conversations with them. And I think that we build trust and community that way. I think that the council should continue to have the coffee chats, even if I'm not able to come. I think that it's great to see that that's happening. And then I think there's a couple things already happening that are going to actually help with this issue. One, I didn't mention this at the very beginning, but the city has had an amazing accomplishment in that we just received the Creative District designation this last week, which is super exciting. So that means downtown, we're going to have Unity Park and we're going to be developing our downtown area as a creative district, which means that it's going to have our community gathering more often. And I think when we have spaces for the community to gather, that those serendipitous conversations that really do help move things along and help us to know what's going on in the community will just happen naturally.
I don't feel tall enough.
You can bend them down.
I don't want to break it. Anyway, my answer to this question, which I love, has 5 points to it. So I'll just go over them all real quick. In order to increase public engagement in decision-making, I think the first step is to ask people. I think the city does a really good job of encouraging discussion, but it's also very specific. Coffee with commissioners is great from 9 to 11 on Wednesday if you're not employed. Invite them, specifically invite business owners, educators, contractors, other interested parties to brainstorm in commissions, specifically applicable to what their interests are. This is my events background talking, but tie focus to a tangible event. I've had one of my favorite and most successful events has been a teeter-totter-a-thon. It's great because it's ridiculous. You build a giant teeter-totter, you invite Nancy to sit on the one end and you invite Rich to sit on the other. And it teeter-totters for 24 hours. Anybody can get into it. The high school kids always take the late night shift. It looks funny, it raises awareness, it engages the community in a unique way, and it becomes something that everybody remembers. And if you change the topic or the goal or the whatever for the year, when you do that same thing, it's not unlike having the rodeo, which Ellensburg is very passionate about. Involve the youth. I already mentioned high schoolers, but some of them can't vote yet, but they will. I think it would be a shame not to have the Leadership Kittitas County program designed a version for high school students, so they start getting involved at a younger age. And then 5, have more challenging discussions. Who's been at every city council meeting since October? The Reed Park opposition. When people don't like what's happening, they're more engaged in the solution. So I think by facilitating more challenging discussions, we could get a lot of good work done.
So again, I'm gonna go back to my construction background because this is what I know. Public engagement needs to be as diverse as the community it's serving. Public engagement by its very core requires you to think about multiple facets and accept multiple facets of way of communicating with people. The way that I communicate with you may be different than you communicate with me. Some people prefer email, some people prefer face-to-face. But one thing that you can do is take advantage of those public gathering spaces when you do have those mass events, when it comes to, say, parades, festivals, those kinds of things. That's a time where you can solicit opinions from the public to let them be aware of these kinds of events or things in their community where we need their decisions on. We can't just say that there's one solution as far as public engagement. If you go strictly to the papers, if you go strictly to email, you're going to lose a large amount of people. And we all know that this generation, this younger generation, if you want them involved, it has to be short, sweet, and on technology. And I don't know how to work a TikTok or anything like that, but I know that's how the kids talk. So that's one of those things that we have to be multifaceted as far as our engagement. It's not just a single solution. We always have to think about how do we communicate with everybody in our community. And so it always has to think about that perspective. But we take advantage of those large groupings. When those big events happen, that's a great time to be able to use that time to get out as much information in multiple different ways as possible.
When I was thinking about these questions, this was the toughest question that I had to answer for myself, because a lot of people just don't want to engage. They're busy in their own lives, and as long as something bad isn't happening to them, they don't necessarily want to engage at all. But if something bad happens to them and then they engage, that's not really the best kind of engagement. The best kind of engagement is when they're engaging in the process and actually going to be involved in making things better. I think it's really important that we do contact people with the media that they prefer. And I think social media is something that that the city probably doesn't use enough to contact people and to get their feedback. Because we can get feedback through social media pretty quickly. They don't have to come to a meeting. They can just answer. So those things are important. Also, I think identifying and celebrating victories are another very important aspect of creating public engagement. There's stuff that the city does all the time that are big deals, but if people don't know about them, then they don't really know what you're accomplishing or what the city's doing for them. And so I think it's important to identify victories and make a big deal out of them so that people know that we're out there. Like I said, it is a tough question, and I certainly don't have all the answers, but certainly willing to be involved in the process.
I agree. This was probably the toughest question to answer, just because, in the 20 years I've been here, the media landscape has changed so much. It used to be a media landscape that was dominated by the local paper, the Daily Record, by KXLE, and some of those. And you still have an older demographic that is tied to that, those two forms of media, but you have a large generation, the millennials, the generation Ys and Zs that, they get most of their news from some form of electronic media, whether it's FaceTime or Facebook or something else. And I think, underlying that all is that I'm concerned about the apathy amongst our millennials, Generation Y and Generation Z folks, that they don't think they can make a difference, that they think the system is rigged, that it's not fair, and quite honestly, they don't trust government and I think that, or authority, and I think that's unfortunate. If I was appointed to the council, one of the things that I would like to do in general terms is, work as a partner with members of the council with a work group to see how we can engage younger people in all aspects of local government, our various committees and boards. This is a non-political or partisan position. I would be willing and wanting to engage young Democrats and Republicans alike on campus, see if there are opportunities to engage high schoolers in basic civics. Like I was taught, I have been a judge at the senior projects at Ellensburg High, and I think it's an opportunity. If there may be an opportunity where we can engage, maybe there's an opportunity for us to have young adult roundtables hosted by the council. I'm not sure if the city of Ellensburg could be at the table for the bite of the bird, but it's those sort of things where we can interact firsthand with younger people within our community. I think that creates the greatest opportunity. And so if I was appointed, it would be those sort of things that I would engage in, trying to get more involvement from all levels of our in all different age groups within our community.
Okay, so I'm going to read what I wrote and then I'm going to rant. Utilize all channels of communication to put out information in any process that is happening. Find unique and innovative ways for the public to be involved in all areas. When citizens feel like they can really be involved in processes, we won't have to try to find ways to get people to come. So here's some notes. One, some of my cohort up here have said, let's find some fun social events. In event planning and project planning, food. Food is always a good driver, right? But some fun social events. I'm going to pause. This is the year 2024, my friends. We have to get out of the dark age in a lot of ways. And I say that I'm not disparaging city council. I work for Central Washington University. It's an issue there. We have to come into the new age and use all forms of communication. Our young people want to be involved. That's where I come from. I love teaching on a college campus. I love encouraging young people to get involved. So all of us in older generations, I'm in that camp, we need to think outside the box. We need to meet with our young people. And we say young people, I'm talking about people who are in their 40s and 30s and 20s, because I'm 56 years old. We need to tap into all generations, and we have to get out of our old ways of thinking and communicating. I love Ellensburg, and I'll say this, I just subscribed to the e-version of the Ellensburg Daily Record. I literally just did that. But my friends, the vast majority of our population are not getting their information from the Daily Record. I'm sorry, they're just not. They're getting their information from social media. And if we as a local government are not tapping into that source, we're missing the boat. Thank you.
Okay, Nancy Goodlow with question number 4. You're starting with Katie.
Katie, okay. What do you think that city government's role can or should be in promoting economic vitality? Thank you.
The city's role can and should be to protect its vibrant community and use the tools it's responsible for to ensure it remains or becomes more affordable, attracts businesses, and facilitates growth. I think additionally, we're obligated to look to the future. Ellensburg does a great job of looking at businesses with Centerfuse, Rotary Chamber of Commerce, the Planning Commission. In your own reports, it says that we need 281 households a year to accommodate the growth that's anticipated by 2037. I think it's important to also be looking at the future of climate change, the increased number of droughts, floods, fires that we're going to encounter, and to plan for that. I also think it behooves us to take advantage of the resources we have. In working with Blue Bear, I worked in partnership with the project management grad students at Central. They made me a giant, huge binder of all the ways they thought that Blue Bear could move into the future as a nonprofit. I think capitalizing on the college as a resource is a good way to engage the community and to plan for those things that aren't great. A lot of my compatriots have talked about infrastructure. I think that's important too. But mostly I think we're fortunate. We're just off the highway. We're in the middle of the state. We've got strong attractions. We're gonna grow. I think that the city's role for promoting economic vitality needs to be looking at the future of climate change and what that's going to look like.
Okay, everybody in the audience, forgive me, but this is gonna, the native Texan in me. We've got to remove barriers to promote economic vitality. If I'm a small business and I'm trying to start out, the more barriers that are in front of me, the more deterrent it is, and I go somewhere else. And I'm going to go back to my native Texas, because you can see across the country, there's a reason why businesses are moving their headquarters by mass to Texas, because they have removed a lot of barriers when it comes to being able to provide business growth. Now, Ellensburg is a unique community. One, we do have RCWs, we have Washington state laws, so there are some things we cannot change as far as Washington state. By all means, we have to abide by that. But there are things that we can do locally when it comes to our zoning, our ordinances, those kinds of things that help us create economic vitality. And this goes back to infrastructure, ensuring that we have the infrastructure to support those companies coming in. If I am a company that wants to come into Ellensburg, and I'm finding out I have to make a massive investment into the city's infrastructure because the city is not prepared for it, that's a deterrent. And so I'm going to go to a different city. So we have to ensure that we're prepared as best as possible with our infrastructure for that. That's the roadways, that's the master planning and how these roadways are going to get in and out. How do we make sure the pedestrians are still safe in that growth? And at the same time, this is an interesting and beautiful community in that we have a big agricultural business and we have to acknowledge it. We can't replace it with larger businesses that look to outsource a lot of the small businesses here. So there's a delicate balance of what type of economic vitality we're bringing in so that we have steady growth. We don't want overpopulation so quickly that our infrastructure can't handle it. We don't want overpopulation so quickly that we lose the safety, the tranquility, the things that the reason why everybody's here in Ellensburg is about. So those are the things that I look to as removing barriers that provide business opportunities that for folks that want to grow here in Ellensburg.
I think the main thing is to think long-term. The city, I was somewhat involved in the comp plan process a couple of years ago, which was a terrific process. And if you follow the comp plan to the letter, things should come out really well. That's easier said than done. But we need to think about the things that our residents who are 20-somethings now, today want to see in their hometown 20 years from now. Well, I think that economic development has to have a county face. I think it also needs to have an Ellensburg-centric face. Maybe that's not popular, but that's what I think. Is I think this end of the county is different than the other end of the county as far as what their goals are and what their trajectory is. And so I think there needs to be some focus on Ellensburg. I think that going on what Delano said, I think making things simple is really important. I know, going back to my hotel experience, when we were going through the hotel planning process here, we had a really good experience with the city as far as going through the planning process here. But it was a very popular project and it was a very big project. And so it got a lot of attention, but I don't think that's always the case. So I think streamlining people's projects and streamlining just the process in general with government is really critical to making it work for people going forward.
Government, specifically city government, does have a role in promoting economic vitality. When I was more actively involved with the chamber and would go to Olympia for legislation and to support other local groups like CWU, which when they didn't have construction projects going on, it greatly affected the sales tax coffers of the city of Ellensburg. But during those meetings, we would go meet with like the director of the Department of Commerce, and they, in nice terms, would tell us that when they were approached by groups looking to relocate to our community, they would tell them in a nice way, kind of to keep going, to head to Grant County, to head to Yakima counties, because it was easier because of they were more inviting. They had port districts, they had other infrastructure in place that we didn't have here in Ellensburg. And I know that we're in a disadvantage because we don't have a port district. Not that I'm advocating that we should, but we have to acknowledge that does put us, because we can't leverage a credit of the state government like other counties do, specifically Benton County and Grant counties. We also have other issues. We have higher electrical rates than our surrounding counties. And while I wholeheartedly support preserving and protecting our historic downtown, the city has dropped the ball, I believe, by not tackling the parking situation that continues to get worse. In fact, the city's policies, such as permitting high density housing, which I support, but not having adequate parking to accommodate the number of residents in those buildings. And while I 100% support outdoor seating for eateries and cafes, the city needs to do something to offset those lost parking spots. I think it's time that the city looks at possibly, some kind of parking structure, somehow, some way to deal with that situation. How do you pull in, if you can't park in front of, say, Woods Hardware and you need a hot water heater, how do you pick that up? You don't. You go to Knutson's or you go to Yakima, you go somewhere else where you can actually, park close to the business that you want to visit. I had a business downtown on Main Street and I moved it out to Dollar Way because my clients couldn't find a place to park, especially my elderly clients. And we have an aging population. I think it's time that the city tackles this issue, whether, and I also had issues with employees that every 2 hours had to go move their cars because to get around the code enforcement, that made a very inefficient staff. It's those, types of issues I think that city needs to deal with If you're talking about maintaining and having a vibrant downtown, let's make it inviting. Let's make it possible to park close to the businesses that that we want to visit. I had lunch with a county commissioner a couple weeks ago, and I had to park or walk 3 blocks just to go to the eatery because I couldn't find parking near the Pearl. So anyway, that's a concern that I have is, again, dealing with the issues that are in front of us.
So this is where I bring up my concerns with infrastructure when talking about ensuring economic vitality. So in my role at Central, I teach a class on information security, ethics, and privacy. And if I lose sleep at night, it's my concern about an attack on our infrastructure. Those that don't know, all of our core systems, water, power, gas, all of it, they're run by computers, which they're all connected to the internet. That's one of my big concerns with infrastructure, in addition to all the other issues that my cohort has talked about up here. For those that don't know, our KitCon system, just to come up to speed, and I know this isn't necessarily a city issue, the city has a stake in it. Just to come up to the year 2024 with technology, they need $35 million. So I think about the city, power, water, we have our own utility, gas, and all of the other things that we need to bring up to par when it comes to technology. Technology is running all of our core systems, and then to have the growth that we're going to have. So we need to look at infrastructure in those ways, in my view. And then what I wrote is the city should be a guiding source for those wanting to start and operate businesses. City government, while ensuring we have policies and code in place to make sure businesses are operating in an overall safe manner, should mostly stay out of the way and let private businesses do what they do best. Allow businesses to meet the needs of the community as a whole. This will come up in my other paragraph, but we keep growing north. We have hundreds of houses up north, but 0 services. To me, that's just baffling. And I've lived in Ellensburg for 23 years, and we have Fred Meyer, my friends. That's all we have. We have Bi-Mart. My wife and I love going to Bi-Mart. But when we want to do any real shopping, we have to go out of town, which means tax dollars go out of town. So we should be encouraging businesses to come to provide those needed goods and services and to provide jobs. And I'll share with you two stories. One, through my event planning business, I did the groundbreaking for a business owner that's going to open the cold storage facility out on Dollar Way. And he said very publicly, and it made me feel really good to hear this, that it was a pleasure to work with the city. This is a major project out on Dollar Way. So that made me really feel really good. My wife and I, we're coming on our 3-year anniversary of opening Sunflower Preschool, which is right over here, very successful. And overall, my experience with the city was good. But I'll share with you this. We wanted to put up a sign. I had to submit plans and drawings for, you drive by and look at it, 407 North Sampson, to put up a sign. Those are the kind of things I think we need to just think outside the box. We need businesses to come to Ellensburg. We want businesses to want to come to Ellensburg to open up shop and to provide jobs. Thank you.
So I'm going to read. So I think one key role that the city can take in economic development is brokering really difficult conversations between our economic development entities. We need to have some hard conversations and make sure that specific niches are covered and that everyone knows their lane. And that might mean ruffling some feathers to sort it out. It's going to be really important to streamlining how things move forward, especially as we look at the countywide economic plan. And so I think that the city can play a really good role in define those roles. So the recent creative district designation for our downtown is going to be pivotal in developing economic vitality for our city. This endeavor is harnessing the incredible work of our vibrant art community and consolidating efforts to create on-ramps for the community to see what is already happening here. As this project develops, we will inevitably see an increase in tourism, which means more lodging tax revenue and greater market share for local artists. community building and connectedness that's so vital to personal well-being will also be natural outcomes. Another key role the city has is in partnering with key community groups like those involved in the development of the I-90 Gateway. I was really impressed by the diversity of voices that joined together to find creative solutions about dealing with floodplain issues there that will actually allow for that land to perhaps be developed, but they are doing it with an eye towards being mindful of the environment, which will also create spaces for families. And I'm really excited about just the diversity of people that are coming together to have that conversation. And I think we need to at least be listening and see what's going on with that. We have to increase the number of private businesses in our community because we have too many government jobs that are paying living wage. And there's just no way to do things like consider a parking, some place to make a parking structure or some of these other really expensive infrastructure things that we need to do if we don't create a greater tax base. We just don't have the money to do it. And so we have to figure out how to strategically develop and bring in private businesses and make sure that we aren't an entire county that runs on government jobs. So all of this means that we have to have some difficult conversations and think strategically about partnering with businesses and dealing with bureaucratic quagmires and challenging conversations about how we work together, because it's hard to do it and please everyone, but we've got to figure out how to make space for private industry.
Okay, thank you. We're halfway through the questions and some people are nodding off. Not you guys, not because you're not saying I think I'd like to take a 10-minute break and allow you guys to have a little bit of interaction with the audience members, and we'll sit back down, same seats, and we'll start again with question 5 at 10 after 7.
It is.
Absolutely. Hi, how's it going?
Yes. Try to ask about and they disclosed to me that there's a growth management. Yeah. They pretty much assign lands to yeah, and then I go to a TV, I'm hearing them saying about 70% government lands they think survey, they're losing. And I'm thinking, they just know it, so they'll, I just when I listen to the city council, they're all moving over this. Running where they got too slow to grow through. Okay. So we, if not, allow it to go with the rules.
Well, so that's one of those things where I'd like to get perspective from everyone, because I don't know all the parts and pieces myself.
It's on the agenda.
And the reason why I'm not sure how much the coffers for the county are filled by obviously the annex property. What we should have done that in account, take that away or not. So those are great questions. Figure out what is.
Who's vibrating?
I put that over there. Big growth sounds fast.
They're down on all the Yeah, I really like this candidate.
By the.
Definitely invested in it. But the last thing we wanted to see, find out a sewer line explode. That's 8 years old. That was already on a document. We have to address it. Nobody's gonna like it, but everybody's gonna be able to appreciate what they're for.
It's not the best.
Right, right. Exactly. I do appreciate that feedback. Unfortunately, quite frankly, it's not that popular. People don't like to hear about. None of the beauty matters. If everything vanilla is crumbled. So that's. Sure. That's the part of it we have to have a conversation.
That process, and I will say, if somebody. Can't you get an engineer out there to see this? And they just go. And I'm just going, wow, what's going on?
That's definitely an ego. Trust that you're forcing land to somebody else's.
Where's that line?
I don't have the answer. All I know is to listen to the opinions and perspective of everyone to try to see if we can come up with calm. A lot of times. One hand not talking to the other, to be quite frank, and that's sometimes a part of it that just needs to be.
Ratio, right, where we set.
And I agree. One of the things that we're doing is that we share with. All good. But everybody should be informed about the problem. So they can understand, okay, this might not be the best. Most popular, so you're coming around and see one that's gonna benefit the most amount of people. Yeah. That's the reason why, of all the other options, we're gonna impact more. Things off the journey.
Nice, distant, don't know, walk away, Dan can get. People get that.
Absolutely. They are. Right.
That's how it is a skill to develop.
And I'm just going, I know.
Exactly.
That they're gonna take my notes.
See what's out.
So that's resiliency, right? You can't put all our eggs in one basket. That basket right now for electricity. Electricity is a single basket that fails. And if it fails, it'll be catastrophic. We do, and we absolutely need to be going to Olympia. So we're able to get those, because unfortunately, we can't make those decisions by ourselves in a vacuum. We're affected by it, right? So we have to have those conversations. At the very least, we got to figure out if we can extend the timeline for transition so that people that have. Gas, they don't have to. Just because bills went up this year, they don't make them change the quality of it. Let's wait and find out.
Yeah, finally,
We're about to get a for our power. What happens if those rates actually double from where they are now? You forced everybody off the natural gas off. Even the strings. That's.
yeah, finally got.
I apologize, I didn't even get your. Teresa. 5.5. Probably pretty beat up. Not by Ellensburg standard, but long enough for me to just say, I like this place, I wanna. I appreciate it. Thank you, Teresa.
Everybody, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't even feel comfortable.
Why can't you go back?
He's a little over 6 minutes. Yeah. My daughter went into high school. She had sex. In high school. Right. Very muscular, very strong. Our neighbor's kid. Yeah. That's a good yes. Very cool.
So that allows you.
We're gonna sit back down, please, and thank you. Here we go. Sarah, you're up.
I think we're starting with
And it'll be Delano to start.
Mono.
Other people on the phone.
Josh isn't
something stupid.
Start without.
So thank you. We'll start again with question 5. Councilmember Beauchamp will be asking that, and candidate Delano, you will start.
All right, I got you.
3 minutes on this one.
So what do you think city government's role can or should be in addressing housing affordability?
So this is one of the most difficult questions that we're facing, not as a city, not even as a state, but as a country. Housing affordability is a national problem. It's almost a worldwide problem at this point. I don't have the solution for you right now. It's something that requires more and more conversation from other cities that may be doing it right. There's not a lot of options out there that doesn't impact us from impacting the way capitalism is supposed to work for developers coming into the city. And we don't want to restrain developers that want to invest into our local community. And so there's a fine line with enticing developers that want to work in our community while also providing housing affordability. One of the things that I have seen is that for developers that are coming into communities, they're incentivized to say a certain percentage, if they're happy to be investing in a residential, is dedicated to affordable housing. That's about the best way that I could think about it. But I think this is a conversation that continues to happen. It needs a lot of different perspectives on here. But I think at its core, in order to address housing affordability, you have to go and have this conversation with developers. They are the ones that are looking to provide economic vitality to our community, whether that is residential, commercial, industrial, whatever it is. You have to work with them and partner with them to figure out what's the incentive for them to be able to bring that housing affordability. There is some incentives because the more people that are in our community from different economic classes, that's more consumers. And that's always a benefit to everyone. But really, we have to bring them to the table to understand that. And it's not a one and done conversation. It's a multiple faceted, long-term conversation. And again, it's not just to Ellensburg or state, but to our nation.
Yeah, I don't have 3 minutes of solutions for this at all, but I thought about this for quite a while, and I think you have to identify projects, create tax breaks and incentives to promote the development. That's easy to say. There's a balance that needs to be found between economic development and housing. It's kind of a chicken and egg thing. If you get the economic development, you need the housing, but in order to get the economic development, you need the housing. So it's a balancing act that needs to be done with developers. And I agree that I think talking to developers and making a path for them that works without compromising what we want for the community with the comp plan and so on is critically important. What we absolutely don't want is to have a situation where we don't have the economic development, but we only get housing development and we turn into a retirement community, because then all that does is we'll end up requiring a lot of services without having the economy to support it. And then that just raises taxes. So it's a tough question, but I think identifying the projects, creating the tax breaks, making them really attractive, and the incentives to promote development have got to be found. And I think that's inevitably the answer.
Housing is clearly a major issue nationally. They say we're over 1 million units short of where we should be. And I don't think we've reached the crest by any means. I think it's only going to get worse. We have an aging population, and I think a lot of our elderly are being priced out of their homes with with property taxes. Since I've owned my house in 2005, my property taxes have almost doubled. I'm looking at my house right now, my utilities, last month, $480 for a 2,000 square foot house. That was my utility bill with the city. I'm looking at the cost of, having to redo all of my housing infrastructure. 15 years ago, government was pushing natural gas. And so my house has a natural gas heater. It has a dryer. It has, all my utilities are natural gas. And now the city is going to be imposing a surcharge that's been passed along by the state because for the natural gas. And, I look at, how do we deal with this issue locally? Right now, it's my understanding that the city already waives the permitting fees and all the hookup fees for Habitat for Humanity and a lot of the low housing. There's tax credits and such, for them. But, but I think the average citizen, when I have people come into my office saying, I've got to decide whether I can only license one of my vehicles this month because I just my property taxes or, my utility bills or, I'm trying to, just have enough to have food on the table. I mean, we're seeing our citizens in this community being squeezed. And, I know the city is looking at many different solutions. They're looking at ADUs, additional dwelling units, I support that. But, how do we get back to, emphasizing home ownership, the freedoms that go along with that? I would hate to see us be a community that, where you have, we're pushing people into rentals. I don't think that's the lifestyle that we want to live. So, I'm concerned about the direction we're heading. I sat with some meetings with our state senator and the housing groups that, she was meeting with. They were talking about, some of the policies the state put in place, which falls down on, the cities and counties and such, where you couldn't remove, people from that weren't paying their bills, paying their rent. You could, and so these, mom and pops that had, 2 or 3 rentals, they just ended up selling them because they couldn't deal with, the issues. They were going to lose everything if they didn't offload those houses because they couldn't pay their mortgages. It's those sort of things that make where government has made housing costs and access to affordable housing even worse. And so I think we have a real challenge. I just don't know what it is.
This is a heavy one. I'm fortunate. My wife and I are fortunate. I say we're fortunate because we bought our first home in 2012. And I could tell you that if we were in a position to buy a home today, we probably would not be able to afford to buy a home. The home that we bought in 2012, the value of that home with no changes has more than doubled. So along with that, property taxes has doubled. And as I was listening to my cohort up here talk, that house is a rental and we have renters that live in it. And we have it below market value on purpose because I was a renter my entire life until literally 2012. I was 40 something years old. And that was a dream come true for me. And so I've always kept our house affordable. But here's the reality that we're facing as a landlord. The property taxes are getting so high that I'm going to be forced to increase that rent. Now, I know I'm not alone in that scenario. So it's a real struggle. And you look at the price of a house, home ownership. I tell my son, who's 33, has a good job and is doing all of the things. I keep saying to him, he might be listening to this, son, you're going to be able to buy a house. But there is a part of me that wonders if I'm selling him a facade. So that's a whole big global issue that I don't know how to tackle. But I do believe, and this is why I'm sitting here, and it's why I do all I do in my community. I truly believe it's where I can have the most effective change, where we can really see change. So what I wrote is, I don't know what the answer is, but let's think outside the box. Let's just really sit down and brainstorm. How can we be different? How can the city of Ellensburg look at housing different and house people? And I have to say this, for people in early recovery, because we want crime and drugs to stop, right? So when someone does find a path to treatment, and this is the work that I've done in this community for years, when someone does find a path to recovery, the number one issue they have when they come back to our community is a place to live. Now that's just globally for anyone. I think of young people in my college classes who love Ellensburg. They can't afford to live here. So we have to, and I don't have the answer. So here's what I wrote. 34 seconds. Wrong one. Okay. Similar to economic vitality, government should guide those who want to build housing. We should be finding ways to encourage and support builders who want to provide that affordable housing and not have so many barriers that it becomes untenable for a builder or developer to do so. And I like being on time, but I'm going to go a little bit over because I'm going to share a story. I'm not going to name the local developer. That local developer, I listen. I like to listen. I like to hear information. He wanted to build affordable housing, but it became untenable for him because some of the requirements he had to have these expensive trees. That was just one area. And I'm going to tell you from firsthand experience in early recovery, I didn't care about what kind of tree I had. I cared if I had a safe roof over my head. That's what I cared about. And I think if you look at people in general, not just people in early recovery, that we want a safe, comfortable place to live. So we need to remove those barriers for our developers to build affordable housing. Thank you.
I answered some of this earlier, but since I have more time, I'll add some more ideas. I do think it's really important that we figure out how to get people in at that early stage because that actually creates more tax revenue for our city. And so I'm thinking about the Motel 6 saying they're not being changed into, which I believe that's supposed to be being made into condos. And so I'm wondering, what can we do to streamline and encourage those developments to happen? I don't know, as Central has lost some students, if there are apartments in the area that could be changed into condos and sold individually, something like that. I do love that the city has an ADU policy, but I think how it's written, it doesn't allow people to get in and then leverage themselves into the market. It just creates another place to rent. You know, so I have a single adult that we had talked about it, but if we have to just put the ADU on our property, it doesn't do anything for her. Right? So we want to get her in to save up and get into something that then she can leverage to build wealth and get into a greater market share as she gets older. And I have thought about this for the artist community too. In general, I don't think it's beneficial to put people on rented land because usually that's wealth is actually generated through the land. But I do think that we should consider some of our spaces that we might have some lots available in the city. And if we had artists who had tiny homes that they could there that would be really artistic and create little communities that then could be affordable housing for artists and would be little niche places where we might see musicians or artists out and about in the community. So there's just some other thoughts about
that. As an employee of Hope Source, this is where I do the most work and I see and speak with the most people. I was specifically hired during the peak of COVID to deal in emergency rental assistance. And I still work in energy assistance, weatherization every day. Seniors on fixed incomes are perhaps the most vulnerable people I talk to every day, even when they own their homes outright. It's extremely difficult. I know that I work in state programs. And I know that I said earlier that it's not about what I want, but I love what everybody else has said about thinking outside the box. I'd go as hippie as to talk about earthships and thermal mass rocket heaters, which is a high heat wood stove alternative. I would talk about universal basic incomes to help people get a safety net in the city. All the programs I work for are very specific. We ask people over and over to provide documents, very personal, important documents to prove their income levels and who they are and that they're citizens over and over and over, whether that's for mortgage assistance payment, help paying your electric bill, your water bill, or because you want your kid to go play soccer. Universal basic income gives autonomy and freedom and respect to the families in a way that these individual grant programs don't. But I think it's important to think outside the box. I also think you guys are, well, I think the city is doing a really great job of talking about different ideas. I'm not sure where the disconnect is. The housing action plan that was adopted in 2021 says that we need 281 units each year to reach population targets. But the numbers, because the study was published in 2021, the information, the data stops after 2020. I would love to see more data. And I would also love to know what happened in 2018, because that was the year that the housing needs stopped being fulfilled. We were super on track and then something changed. I don't know what that is. I was recently on a panel with the Leadership Kittitas County program with 4 contractors. Some were electricians, some were low housing, some were high end. Each was asked 2 questions. One was to please talk about a success you've had in your business. And the other was to talk about a struggle or a hindrance that you've had. Out of the 4, none talked about any successes. They all talked about the constantly changing rules and regulations, the permit process taking 2 years, the lack of the ability to outsource inspections themselves. They were all pretty united on how frustrated they were in their goal to build additional housing in the city. I'm over time, but I also just wanted to mention recently in a city council meeting, modular homes were mentioned. That is just a fancier word, as is a tiny home for a mobile home. I think a moratorium on mobile home parks is short-sighted. Instead, maybe consider cooperative, publicly owned, group-owned lands. So you're renting from yourselves and you're aware of where those fees that you're paying every month are going to, ideally to the infrastructure of that mobile home community. Thanks.
Thank you. We'll move on to question 6. I'll run back to Josh on this one, and we're starting off with Steve.
What do you think city government's role can or should be in building a safe and inclusive community? What is the role of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission in achieving a safer and more inclusive community?
And these are 3-minute questions. This one.
Obviously, we need to cultivate opportunities for diversity. One of the things that I think is going to be a small step towards that is the creative district. Having the creative district active here will encourage people to come into this city and, I'm sorry. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry. What I was saying is I think the creative district will be a small step towards encouraging diversity in the city. I think there's a lot of other factors that are involved. Certainly, economic development and affordable housing are interdependent with diversity. And all those things need to be addressed. The more opportunities that we create from an economic development standpoint, the more graduates will stay here, the more people that will be attracted to Ellensburg at all levels of the economy. And all of those things will encourage diversity. I certainly don't have all the answers to that, but it's something that we just need to focus on all the time because it's super important and it goes to the future of the community.
I believe with all my heart that each and every citizen should be allowed equal protection under the law. I know that's a high ideal, but I think we should strive to achieve it. That all individuals should feel safe in their homes and their community. I believe that bigotry and discrimination is inherently wrong in every form. As Martin Luther King said, people should be judged on their character, not by the color of their skin. And let me extend that further. I believe if he was still alive, I believe he would extend that to sexual orientation or sexual identity. I employ, work with, have colleagues, and serve a very diverse melting pot of individuals. Growing up with a single mother in a poor working class household during my formative years, I was a minority in my largely Hispanic and African American community. I am so thankful that I was raised not to know any prejudice based on color. I have family, friends, clients, customers that do not fit in the traditional recognized spousal relationship between a man and woman, but I can tell you unequivocally that they love their spouse with all their heart, with all their soul, and they love their children and their community and their families no different than anyone else. I support the rights of those to love who they want to love. I support 100% their rights to do so. I have spoke about my concern about having a safe community and for all citizens. I can also say that many of my friends and family want to be identified by who they are, by their character, by their excellence, by their professional field, about the person they are and the family they have and how they contribute to the community. Their sexual identity is only part of who they are. They do not want to be defined by that alone. I will support the role of the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Commission as long as they are bringing forward ideas and plans that unite us as a community and not divide us and separate us based on our differences. Thank you.
City government should ensure policies and city code are not excluding any person or body of persons from being a part of the city and or city processes as a whole. City government should be 100% supportive of anyone, regardless of their ethnicity, sexual preference, socioeconomic background. I also believe city government should ensure equity is defined in a way that includes classes of people that otherwise may be missed. Examples are people from socioeconomic classes, people with less than visible disabilities, and an area that I'm really passionate about, that there's still a lot of stigma associated with today, and that is substance use disorders and people with substance use disorders and mental health disorders. So that's what I have written down. I was raised by a single mom, just like my friend, not same family, but a single mom, 4 of us. I use the term dirt poor, but we never had a lot, raised primarily in the Pierce County area, and moving is what we did. That's just what we did. So I've always been around everyone. And in my family, if we had one thing in all the chaos, We just loved people. That's how I was raised. And the one thing I love about working at Central Washington University is our young people, because they keep me fresh. They keep me alive. They keep me loving all people in all ways. About 2 years ago, my niece Gwendolyn changed from being Spencer, my male niece, to Gwendolyn, my nephew, to now Gwendolyn, my niece. And I remember the conversation my wife and I had with Gwendolyn when Gwendolyn told us what she was doing. This is just what we did, and this is how we are as a couple. We love you, Gwendolyn. Let's go. I'll share another story. We had a student live in our home. We've had this happen a couple times along the way, where the student, and my memory's not fresh, I say this lovingly, I smoked a lot of pot in my day, so I forget things, okay? I say this to students, they just laugh. I've been in recovery almost 17 years. Don't worry, all is well. And if you smoke pot, it's legal, and that's okay. Now, but we had a student living with us, and he was a male. Remember his name? Yeah, anyway. And I remember he went home on break, and he came back with his mom, and he sat at our kitchen table, and he was really nervous. He says, I'm going to start transitioning and I'm going to be a female. Will you still let me live here? Like, why wouldn't we let you live here? That's just who I am, and that's who we are. And I bring that mantra into everything I do. So if I'm selected to be on that council, you now know my personal philosophy in that area. Thank you.
So I'm a big believer in creating spaces for community to develop because people are included by having relationships with other people. That's just how it happens. And so I'm excited about Unity Park. I'm excited about the creative district. And then I'm also going to lean into my mental health and neuroscience tool set to talk about what I think the DEI could do. We're learning a lot more about how behavior is shaped. And we're learning that it comes from our sense of identity, that some of it is really pre-conscious. So knowing who we are, but having our community sense of identity. So I think about the DEI as a place where we could have conversations where maybe we create some identity statements that say, we believe in the dignity of every person. Or just creating community conversations where we can talk about what can we agree on as a community, because then the social pressure will be there because we can't enforce it by laws or other things like that. It's really us caring about each other and holding each other accountable as people and humans to treat each other well. So I think from my learning of neuroscience, I also think there are 5 core skills that we need to be in relationship, and I could talk to you more about what those are. So I think there are 5 things that we should really consider being part of identity statements. One is we're a community that has hard conversations without damaging relationships. We're a community that greets each other warmly. We're a community that values making space to quiet. We're a community that fosters gratitude. And we're a community that assumes the best about each other.
People have a deep desire to feel safe, included, and valued. Education about differences is important, but finding the similarities in any group is paramount. The DEI Commission is playing a vital role in strengthening that fundamental need. I think it ties into another question posed, how to increase engagement. A single community goal with a limited timeline that engages the community provides a common purpose. Inviting different groups to work together towards that goal bridges communities. Since moving to Ellensburg, I've experienced 2 very specific examples of this. One is the recovery community, which my friend over here has spoken about a little bit. And the other is Habitat for Humanity, where I'm helping a coworker build her first home. In both scenarios, a very diverse group of people is working together for a specific goal. In recovery, it's to become free from addiction, myself included, from alcohol and drugs. And the people that I've met on that journey, working together to overcome that addiction, has just been so incredible. If you'd asked me 5 years ago if I ever thought I'd be watching the Super Bowl with an ex-meth head, I would have said no. Similarly, at Habitat for Humanity, I don't speak Spanish, but my recipe book has been so improved by working with families that I can't communicate perfectly with. I love. I'm a little bit jealous, in fact, of my coworker. She's going to get to live on the same block with these people that have helped each other build their homes together. They already watch each other's children. They already call each other up and, you know, go to events together. One of the Habitat families said, "I'm going to be there for you tonight." And I was like, "You are not. I do not need to know anybody in this room. It would be so much worse." But I think it's really important, especially in light of the recent visit from the U.S. Department of Justice regarding the Ellensburg School District bullying inquiry, as well as the recent Zoom bombing, hate speech experienced in the city council hall itself. I believe in free speech as much as the next guy, but having statements as suggested, like Jennifer, about inclusivity is good. It should be a goal. I think also having a more diverse representation, not only on the DEI committee, the one dedicated to that issue, but on all the committees would behoove not only the council, but the city. Thanks.
Big sigh of relief for everybody for the most sensitive, awkward question on this list from a lot of people, right? Okay, so I'm going to turn around to everyone here so you can see me. So this is always an interesting thing. Just a quick background on myself. I was fortunate to be born in Houston, Texas, and that's a city that is as diverse as you can get. And the one thing, if you've ever been to Houston, Texas, is all about our food and how they share with each other. So let me ask, just hand raised, how many of you have had Hispanic or Mexican food before? How many of you had Asian food before? How many of you had traditional barbecue or maybe even African American food? I don't know. Italian. We all like food. I would say that the role of government in building the safe and inclusive community is not just government. It's all of you, the community. It's your responsibility. It's my responsibility. It's all of our responsibility. That means whenever you see someone that looks different from you, do what you do with your neighbors. Smile. Smile. It may be awkward, but smile. That smile is what keeps people in our community. That smile is what opens up people's hearts, their opinions, their recipe book. That's what it takes. It's those little activities. It's not this big movement. It's the simple things. I apologize to get biblical here, but do unto others as you would have done unto you. Smile. That's all it takes. But to actually have some more palatable movement in how we can do that in our community, you have one of the best resources a block away in Central Washington. If you haven't been on that campus, we are one of the most diverse universities in the region, the country. Get around those students when they're with their student organizations like Mencha and BSA, BSU. They are all attending each other's cultural organizations, student groups. Doesn't matter what their background is, because they want to learn. And they often meet over food. What I think the city should do is work with the university with those student groups. There's some kind of invisible barrier in their minds that University Way might as well be the river Styx. Students don't want to come south and adults don't want to go north. It's dangerous up there. Oh, they're going to get you down there in the town. We should be building that. It's all in our heads. It's fear. It's not real. Use those students to be able to build the gap of knowledge between the cultures, and then smile. It's going to be awkward, but it's going to be all right. That's it.
Okay, thank you. This will be a 2-minute question. David, you'll do this one. And question number 7, and we're starting off with Brian again.
Okay. Okay.
So the question is, the community is deeply divided about a hypothetical issue of importance to Ellensburg's future. Describe how you would go about deciding how to vote.
Well, I think the first step is to listen a lot more than you talk. Some of you may know that I'm a member of the Legion. And I'm very well aware of the issue up there. But as I've shared with them is that, you know, I've been going to Reed Park well before I was a member of the Legion, 20 years. I have a stressful day at work, take lunch, I'd go grab some fast food and I'd go up there and sit and decompress and, enjoy the view. I think that's what's so unique about up there, is the view. And and it was, well before, like I was even associated with the Legion. But when I look at how that park is used, I've been going up there 20 years. And I can tell you very few people actually use the park. But what I can tell you is that it doesn't matter when I go up there, there are people up there parked, enjoying the view, enjoying our community, what's so unique about it. And there are people of all ages. And I know that this is a very divisive issue. I had the opportunity, I was at a football game and I had an opportunity to speak with the city manager. And, what I shared with her, I let her know, hey, I'm a member of the Legion. Okay. But I also know that usually, somewhere there's a position, a place of compromise where, when you're negotiating, when you're talking with two parties trying to find common ground, you have to be willing to find, that common ground in the middle. You don't get exactly what you want on either side, but it's something that you can live with. And if I'm appointed to the council, that's going to be my mantra, to listen a lot more than I talk. Talk to the stakeholders, try to find, are there unintended consequences that, we haven't thought of. I want to really want to think these things through and then try to find common ground. Where can we agree and focus on those things? And that's how I would approach those, very difficult decisions. Thank you.
So I want to repeat the question because I heard two parts to this question. And it states the community is deeply divided about a hypothetical issue of importance to Ellensburg's future. Describe how you would go about deciding how to vote. And for me, there's two parts to that. So what I put is what Brian started with. And I wrote down effective communication. My friends, we're always communicating all the time. But are we communicating effectively? And when contentious issues come up, I get excited about this because I give lectures on effective communication. When there's contentious issues, one of the first things that I force myself to do, and it's not a generational thing, my friends, we're all poor listeners because of the great thing of technology. We're all poor listeners. So when there's any type of contentious issue, I force myself to actually start listening, to gain information from all sides. I've followed every big issue in this city that's happened over 20 years, right? The most recent one is the park. I kind of follow them all and I listen. In fact, an example is, I think has it been 2 years ago when the fire marshal, we had to shut down some taco trucks because of the fire suppression issue. That was a big issue. It was a big issue for me because a friend of mine owned one of those and they had to shut down and I got really angry. Like, how can they do this? I had to step back and I had to gain some information and I had to listen. And I learned it wasn't as cut and dry as I thought. Most things aren't. So if I'm selected to sit in that chair with all issues, but especially contentious issue, because people get fired up, rightly so. In a lot of cases, we get passionate about things. It's fascinating what I get passionate about. Ask my wife. She's like, really? I need to first listen to what people are saying and gain information to make the most informed decision based on the information gathered. Listen to my co-council members, Once done listening, I need to ask questions to ensure clarity. That's part of being an active listener. And then vote. Because I work for the largest dysfunctional family in the county, Central Washington University, a large governmental agency. It takes years to get things done, right? I get it. But I'm also a private business owner. I've worked in private industry. So I get that we need to take time to listen, and I'm almost done. But then we need to take action. Thank you.
So first, I'd like to hear from the community and experts relevant to the decision needing to be made. And I'd want to be thoughtful to ensure that an emotional or vocal special interest group or person isn't drowning out the needs of less vocal citizens. And I'd also want to ensure that those invested in the issue know how to properly engage the city to have real areas of concern addressed. And I know it's standard practice for the council to not respond to public comment, but I would love to see public commenters given the information they need to productively engage to see their concerns addressed. And it would be my hope that serious concerns could be mitigated through communication and strategic compromises. I actually believe that hard conversations bring better solutions and that tensions can be viewed as opportunities. In the end, I would have to assess the information at hand and decide what's best for the community at large. And I think it's vital for a council member to understand that making hard decisions is part of the role. And there may be people who are angry at you for doing it, but you have to make a decision and stick with it.
I think this question is especially important as this number 3 council role isn't an elected one, it's being appointed. And this is definitely the first opportunity I've gotten to see a lot of you in person. Usually you're very small on my phone. And I don't know that I've ever met most of you, which is crazy. But I love what everybody said so far. I think it's important to consider every issue from all sides, talk to as many people as possible, consult both people and information from people and places that have experienced similar growth and obstacles, but ultimately vote with the best interest of the future of Ellensburg residents in mind. The things that I think are great about Ellensburg is the trust in the community that I've found here, the safety that I feel. And I also just wanted to share briefly that I was pretty politically active in Portland. And I remember sitting at a panel at the YMCA. It was a Black Lives Matter panel, and I was sure I knew, Portland's pretty liberal, what was going to be said. But I was very surprised to see on the panel Teresa Rayford, who's pretty much the lead activist in the Black Lives Matter movement, or she was at the time, and Police Captain Kevin Modica. They were seated next to each other, both African-American members of the community, both very active in the community, and very obviously in opposition to each other. There was a mom in the audience that came up to the microphone and asked what the two of them would do to protect her son, who is turning 16. She'd already sent him to a Catholic school, so he would be wearing the safest looking outfit she could think of. Neither Teresa nor Captain Modica had an answer for her. And I was just floored by that. Even within all sorts of communities, there's division. And I think it's important to take the time to consider all of the opinions involved.
So I think this question really is important as far as who you decide to appoint to the vacated position. The reason why is that everybody here are all qualified. We all care about our community. We all represent different backgrounds for a reason. And it's important to have multiple different voices in those backgrounds. That's what makes up our community. And the reason why we have a council, that's why you have it all over the country, is because you're going to have different opinions. It's intended that way. That's the checks and balances. So it's not uniform. Rarely should we have any sort of vote on any hot topic where everybody uniformly agrees. There's going to be an outlier. Usually there is, and that's okay. It should be acceptable, even in our community. So for me, it is exactly what everyone up here says, taking as much information as possible and making the best decision. For me, I think long-term, again, because of my construction background, that's the way I have to think about things. From a university's perspective, my role is to think 30, 50 years in the future. And that's what I have to think about. So if decisions that is in front of me, as far as short-term decisions versus long-term, for those that care about it, I'm going to be going long-term. That's where my focus is going to be when it comes down to it. I think that's the thing that from a master planning perspective, you have to think about. That's the reason why I had infrastructure as one of those really critical areas that we need to focus on as a city. But that's how I go about my decision making. Thank you.
So I've heard most of the things that I was going to say. I think, you have to seek input from a cross section of the community stakeholders. That's certainly the first thing you do before you make any decision, especially if it's on a topic that you're not fully abreast of. Then the things that I think also has to happen is you have to apply your own ethical compass to the decision to make sure that it tracks with what you believe the ethics of yourself and the community are. And then finally, you have to consider the utilitarian perspective. What is the greater good? Is a decision going to be the decision that works for the greater part of the community without overly imposing on those that are on the other side of the decision? And that's easier said than done. But at the end of the day, decisions have to be practical and pragmatic. And I think that's what I have always felt that I brought to boards and commissions and any kind of committees that I've served on, is a practical, pragmatic perspective. I think that's all anybody can ask for. Practical, workable, pragmatic solutions. Thank you.
Okay, the last of our scheduled questions is question number 8. We'll start with David and Nancy.
Hey, David. We had our most recent city council election filing period in May. What makes you more motivated or qualified now to seek this appointment than to run it for election?
Great. I'm glad you guys asked this. So I was not in a place last May, time-wise, to give the time to this position. So I stepped down as the executive director of the Kittitas County Recovery Communities Organization at the first of this year. I have some other projects in mind that I want to start on at some point, and the timing being such, this position became available. I went, well, maybe the universe is telling me this is where I can commit my time. And what I want to impart on you is time is important to me. I do a lot of different things in different pockets of my life. So anytime that I'm going to make a decision like this, I seek counsel from my circle of influence. I talk to my amazing wife who's behind me, and I really consider, can I commit to this? Because when I do something, I'm all in. That's just how I roll. I'm either going to do it or I'm not. So that's the reason. Last May, I would not have had the time. I have run for council twice in the past. It's been a few years ago. Small town, you can literally lose by a few votes. And I think that's what happened one election cycle. But all of that to say, this has been something that's rolled around in my brain, and people that know me, why don't you run for council? I'm like, well, I don't know. Anyway, so I did not have the time last May. I do have the time now. This is a great opportunity for me to step into that chair and see if this is an area I want to stay in for the long term, which would be my goal. There you go.
So I haven't ever really engaged the election process, so I wasn't super aware of filing times and things like that. And honestly, it seems a little intimidating to go through the election process and easier to do as an incumbent, if I'm being frank. But I had just been elected as president of the Arts and Cultural Alliance in May. So I had just begun my process with that group. And so since May, we became incorporated. We became a 501c3. We've done a lot of work. Also, since May, I was part of the hiring process for the Centrifuge Executive Director, which gave me a lot of time to think about what our community needs as far as leadership and economic development. And there have been other things moving forward with the strategic plan in the county, and just even CW is doing some reorganization of their entrepreneurial and community programs. So a lot has happened since May, and I feel like I might actually be able to step in and be effective on the board at this time, and that is up to you to decide. But those are some things that have happened since May for me.
I actually was asked in May to run for city council. Tess Fenner, chair of the Kittitas County Democrats, asked me to run. Endearingly, I know her from when I rented a 400 square foot ADU for $800 a month in an alleyway when I first moved to Ellensburg. I know it's a nonpartisan position, but it meant a lot to me that she had said that. But at the time in my life, I didn't feel I had the time required for the position, let alone an election. I was 6 months into a new role at Hope Source. I got recruited from within to work in the weatherization program. And additionally, I had just purchased and moved into my home here in Ellensburg. The one I could afford was 70 years old, didn't have any insulation. And it does require a lot of work. There was a time I was pooping in a bucket. But I feel considerably more confident in my new duties at Hope Source today. I'll probably continue to work on the house for the next several years as time and funds allow. But I survived my first winter here, having insulated it and updated the heat source. Additionally, the time I've spent in energy and weatherization at Hope Source with the Leadership Kittitas County program and in my volunteer efforts with Habitat for Humanity and Blue Bear Puppet Lab have all reminded me how much I've missed being politically active as a resident. I also maybe shouldn't say this, but I appreciate the briefer term as an educational opportunity. It would allow me to learn a lot in a short period of time and be better prepared to campaign in earnest in the future.
For me, this is all about opportunity. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. Quite frankly, I don't think that I am well known enough to run or win an election here, especially in my short tenure to the city. Again, got folks here that have been here 20, 30 years and are still considered outsiders until you're here a couple generations. So this was just an opportunity that I thought would be great to continue to serve my community. Again, you have an option. You could either complain about what's happening or you could try to make improvements on it. So my civic duty is to try to make improvements wherever I think I can. I currently serve on a planning commission, happy to continue in that role. But if I'm elected to this, I'm happy to serve in this role as well. So that's it.
When I first considered the possibility many years ago, I was planning and eventually building Hotel Windrow, so I did not have the time. Then in 2022, I was diagnosed with cancer. I was treated in late 22 and early 23 and spent a good part of 23 making sure I was cancer free, which I am. In the fall, I set a goal to re-engage in 2024 in the town and in volunteering and in things that I could do to help this town that I love. Then I was at a lodging tax meeting and found out that Adam had resigned and that the position had opened. And it just seemed like something that had just happened at the right time. So it seemed like it would fit in where I am in my life. I'm no longer involved in the day-to-day operation of the hotel. I'm retired and have the time to commit, with the unfortunate exception of the next couple of weeks when I'm going to be on a vacation that I've long since planned. But other than that, I am willing to commit and will give it my full attention if given the opportunity.
last year was a difficult year for me, in that, I lost my dad to bone cancer in early April, and I spent the next 4 hours or 4 months dealing with estate issues. So that was an issue, as well as I was had on a 2-year commitment with the Department of Licensing, one of 2 sub-agents out of 137 offices statewide, that was in the middle of rewriting all the policies and procedures that govern the 137 private offices like mine, plus the 39 county offices and such. And so with those commitments, as well as I thought we had some good candidates that already announced that were going to run, with those commitments and the personal issues with my dad, I just didn't feel it was a good time in my life to make that decision. So I did not.
Okay. Thank you. I'll take this opportunity because just to give my impression, I'm glad I'm not sitting where you are. You guys did outstanding. And I will tell you that I have learned some things that I'm going to use in my role here, your suggestions and different perspectives to look at this. And I think we have a difficult decision. So next up is the opportunity for public comment. So we're going to stick to the same rules, 3 minutes, talking about the selection process for city council only. Okay, so we didn't take a list, so I will do a show of hands. If anybody would like to approach, you're welcome to do so.
Penny Whitman from Ellensburg. I'd like to know what any of you, if you have any idea, what we can do to develop more for our younger children, not just the older ones or high school or dances or this, that, but what can we do to have somewhere for our 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8-year-olds to go and play? It's not 30 years old.
Okay, I think as a council, we'll probably handle that question, just not to tag on to the process. So, but good point. So anybody else?
I need to announce myself. Okay. Angela Lang, resident here in Ellensburg. I want to thank each and every one of you. It was really nice to hear some things about you and what you all bring to this community, especially if you are appointed. I wish all of you luck. I really liked some of the comments. One of the things, taking advantage and engaging with the community at big events. I think that is an amazing time to get to know the community here. And this is a big community. That's part of our community, our Save Craig's Hill. I want to invite you guys. We have a meeting at the end of the month. It's February 27th, 6 o'clock at the event center up at the Legion. And that's for anybody who wants to come and speak to our group and to listen to our group. Thank you very much.
Anybody else? Okay, catch our attention later in the process if that makes sense, or if somebody has something they want to add, we'll potentially be able to accommodate that. So council, I'm going to sort of ask this, and I guess 5 of us get to make this decision. I'm disinclined to go into an executive session, but we will if any of you ask for that. So under state law, we're allowed to discuss qualifications for public office and the campaign. So we can have that conversation in private, exclusive of the public if we choose to do so. We can't make decisions, and it's a defined thing, and we'll come out here and we'll effectively have the voting will occur in public, and potentially that conversation may be somewhat repeated. That being said, I'm sort of disinclined to initiate that process unless anybody's wanting to do that now. Just any one of you can ask for it and we'll do it. Okay. Now we reach item 2D on the agenda, which is council discussion. And I'll just give a kind of an overview of how the voting is going to go. So obviously, with a 6-person council, we need to reach a majority of 4 votes for any single candidate. That may take multiple rounds of voting. I'm inclined to use the written votes. But before we get into that process, and we may, like I said, we may go multiple rounds. Before we get into that process, I'd like to have the council have an opportunity to discuss, and if there are any follow-up questions, ask the question to the council, and then let's figure out if we can equitably have that ask the candidates. I don't want to ask specific candidates follow-up questions, but if there's a way to sort of reframe that so that everybody has an opportunity, we can potentially do that. So you got voted to pick the next council person.
Oh, thank you. That's what happens when you leave the room, right?
So we are at council discussion. So council, if I don't know if there's observations, like I said, I will honestly tell you that it's impossible not to come into these types of processes without, some level of bias. I was aware of a bias. I will tell you that I honestly felt each one of you shined on at least one of the questions. And so you made my job a lot more difficult.
I just don't want to go in alphabetical order when we vote. I'm always first,
Yeah.
always first.
Okay.
So you're lucky none of you start with A because you would have gotten my vote right off the gate.
Council, do you have any questions?
Well, not questions. I just, what I'm looking for, and I agree with Rich, at least, I liked different one of your responses to different things. What I'm looking for is someone who's open-minded, someone who can work as a team collaboratively. And several of you mentioned that, and I'm confident all of you meet those criteria. You've all demonstrated a commitment to Ellensburg and through your volunteering and your service at various levels. I think Mr. Cullinane shines in on that measure. And maybe just because he's been around 20 years. I'm also looking to balance or fill holes in, gaps in what we have already up here in your connections to the different communities, your skills and knowledge. It sounds like 2 of you are involved in the arts. We got 2 from CWU. We get 2 chamber experience, and 2 of you have sought the position before. And it's there's just a lot to balance. So I'm not going to tip my hand. I'll just vote on paper, but you all did very well. And I also came away with some ideas that I'd like to pursue. So.
Well, I would echo comments from Councilman Wilkes and Mayor Elliott. Very impressed with all of your responses. We have a very strong pool of candidates, and it will be a difficult decision to decide. I was pleased with your response to the question about diversity, equity, inclusion. All of your responses were very strong. I could sense a commitment on your part to those pieces of our community, and I appreciated that especially. I really liked all your answers about how you would respond to before you made a decision that was very difficult, possibly even a split decision. I like the way you think. on that. Have a sense that you are all open-minded and open to new ideas, different kinds. Okay, I thought I was close enough, sorry. Okay. Do I have to start all over? Okay. So I think I'll just stop at that point and thank you all very much for applying.
Just, I mean, really to, reiterate, this is, I'm the new guy up here and this is the first time that I've been on this side of the decision-making process. And I took the time and did as much research as I could. But once you get up here and you see what's the best word? Just the thoughtfulness in each and every one of your answers. I could vote a number of different ways. I may write down a name and all of a sudden be like, man, but this other candidate was just so good on this point and good on this point. So it's definitely not just word service that this is a hard decision. For me, it's a very hard decision because I care about this city so much. And what's great though, is I see we got 6 people that also care about this city this much. So I just want to say thank you for everybody for the time. And it's going to be a tough one, but wherever we land, I'm going to be confident that the city council just got stronger.
So I'll just pile on because all the good stuff's been said. So I would agree with everything that's been said. I think I've been doing this a while. And in fact, I found my path to the council the same way you are all pursuing. And I actually cannot remember another appointment process where the pool was as strong and as deep. I think the last time we went through this, people actually didn't show up for the interview because different reasons. So I applaud all of you for sticking with it and expressing your willingness to serve. I too agree that I think each one of you would bring something of value to the council. You'd all be able to serve very well, and it will be a difficult decision. I think with that, I'll turn it over to Mayor.
So if there's nothing else, I just wanted to make sure everybody's on the same page from voting, and our lawyers over there staring at us. So this to me. The intent is I guess it's possible that we'll get a majority vote, which is 4 or more votes for a single candidate in the first round of voting. It's also very likely that we won't. And to narrow the field, my thought is that if for whatever reason a candidate doesn't receive a vote, that they'll be excluded, and we'll just continue to widow or bring down the number of candidates until we get a majority vote. Is that acceptable? Do you guys have any questions before we start the voting? Am I good? We need ballots. So you will be able to tell which candidate we voted for in each of the rounds.
It's not a secret.
It's not secret, it's just. You guys are done. We're gonna give them to you now. Dustin. You want me to give them to you, or do I read them, or what do we do?
Get them.
Makes you look smarter.
Glad something does. All right, Councilmember Thompson voted for Brian. Councilmember Beauchamp voted for Delana Palmer. Councilmember Goodloe voted for Delano Palmer. Councilmember Lowquist voted for Jennifer Lubanski.
What was it?
Jennifer.
Councilmember Miller voted for Jennifer Lubanski. And Councilmember Elliott voted for Delano.
Okay, so by my count, we had votes for Brian Cullinane, Delano Palmer, and Jennifer Lubanski, correct? Okay. So we will reset the voting with those three candidates available to vote for.
Yeah, but if no one changes.
Well, somebody has to change.
All right, Councilmember Beauchamp voted for Delano Palmer. All right. Councilmember Goodloe voted for Delano Palmer. Councilmember Lowquist voted for Jennifer Lubanski. Councilmember Miller voted for Jennifer Lubanski. Councilmember Elliott voted for Delano Palmer. And Councilmember Thompson voted for Delano Palmer.
Okay, so Delano, congratulations. So we have on the agenda item 3 here for you to take your oath of office, and then we're going to give you a whole bunch of work to do on boards and commissions.
Maybe the planning commission.
So Dustin, are you gonna, okay, so you'll step up with Dustin to do your oath of office.
I solemnly swear to affirm that I will support the Constitution, that I will support and promote the Constitution and laws of the United States and the laws of the United States. And the state of one, the laws and ordinances of the Constitution, the laws and ordinances. I will faithfully, constantly, and I will faithfully, honestly, and impartially, on the duties of the office. Perform the duties of the office of city council member. City Council, the city of Ellensburg, Washington, 44.
So actually, Delano, you actually come sit up here now. You can come around this way if you want. Around.
Time.
Okay, so we're getting a list of the current boards and appointments. So this is an opportunity. We spoke last 6 weeks about sort of holding on to some of the boards and commission appointments that we have had over the past couple of years with the intent that we would see who we brought onto council and give you an opportunity to make sure that some of those things are matching up. But there's probably an opportunity for us to kind of mix things up a little bit. So what page is this thing on?
58, last couple of minutes, 56. sorry. Very end.
Okay. So, on our list right now, we have most of the positions filled. I think some of them are filled temporarily. We have an identified vacancy for Kittitas County Law and Justice Council, which is a third Wednesday of every month at 8 a.m. So I guess I would just throw that out there to the council as a whole, as to, you know, from a scheduling standpoint, but also for Delano, if this is something you are the least bit interested in. And available to attend an 8 a.m. meeting. They're half-hour meetings.
I will need to confirm with my schedule.
Okay, so page 57 is where that one's at.
Okay.
We have a vacancy on the Kittitas County Solid Waste Advisory Committee. That's 2 times a year. It's easy. With a current vacancy.
Sure.
All right. They're going to build a new solid waste facility, so it's going to get interesting. Steer I-90 Coalition, is that still?
It is still a thing. Yes.
Okay. So regional transportation.
I was monitoring that for a while, but then I dropped off their mailing list and I happened to miss the last meeting. So it's open up for grabs.
And to my knowledge, there isn't a regular scheduled meeting. I think it's an occasional meeting.
And they allow virtual, and right now, most of the focus is on the improvements to I-90 from the past to Cle Elum, but it obviously has some direct and indirect effect on Ellensburg.
Sure.
And Mayor, if I may have you go back to page 56, there is a vacancy on the Lodging Tax Advisory Committee.
Oh, yeah.
Nancy Lilquist has been filling in. Thank you very much until we have somebody appointed. And that is meeting every other month now.
So first Wednesday of every other month. Okay. Is anybody interested in that one?
Well, I'm wondering, just with Delano's background, if he and being, because he can't be on the planning commission now, correct?
He can be a liaison to the planning commission. He can't be a planning
I
commission.
wondered, because I wouldn't mind taking the lodging tax and his background, he might be a way better fit than me on the affordable housing.
And you'd be great on lodging tax.
Yeah, because I
With
just,
your
small business.
hospitality business.
Mhm.
You interested in that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so on the Affordable Housing Commission, Palmer goes on, Trump comes off, and then you said you're gonna go down and take lodging tax? Okay. Is there anybody assigned to something that they would rather? And we've got, do I have a possible on the Law and Justice Council?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'll sign up.
Is there any other movement that we would like to do at this time? That's something that interests somebody that somebody else is in? Anyone that Elliot's on?
You want me to stay on KitCom?
You need to stay on kick on for another month. Good news on that front, but yes. Awesome.
I'm currently on the Chamber of Commerce. At last meeting, it was determined that the meetings would be bounced around the county as opposed to just in Ellensburg. And with work, it's kind of impossible to do the 30 minutes to Cle Elum, 30 minutes back plus the hour. I could do the lunch in the middle, but so I think somebody else, if wanted to jump into that, it'd be easier than what I can carry.
So Heidi, between you and Kelly, from a staff perspective, is that covered with somebody who makes every third or fourth meeting or?
We
Or-
try to, yes.
Okay. So
So we can fill in the days the times that you might not be able to make it.
Ellensburg,
yeah.
I can be at no problem. It's just
Sure.
the travel during the middle of work day.
We can make arrangements for that. Unless somebody else wants to take it.
are we hitting everything?
I believe so.
Okay, that was item 4A on our agenda. We actually don't have any other items on the agenda, so get a motion to adjourn, we can adjourn.
Second.
We're adjourned. Okay, guys, thank you sincerely.
Thanks again.